On the 11th of September 2014, police officers in Jeffersonville, Indiana were dispatched to conduct a welfare check on Tammy Jo Blanton after colleagues reported that she had not arrived for work that morning. The police officers arrived at her house only to have a suspicious man with blood on his hands meet them at the front door. What they found inside her house sent chills down their spines. A crime scene so horrific and a tale so tragic. This is the truly inhumane death of Tammy Jo Blanton, who was brutally stabbed and mutilated in her home that fateful September morning in 2014. Welcome back to our channel, Mysterious 7. Thank you for joining us for this video. Today we are looking at the truly disturbing case of Tammy Jo Blanton, who suffered at the hands of someone she loved and trusted. Betrayed in the most horrific way, this is one of the most horrific cases that we have come across. Join us to learn one of the most tragic cases that have taken place in the state of Indiana. A little after 9:30 on the 11th of September 2014, a woman named Sabrina Hall called the local police station to report that her co-worker and friend, Tammy Jo Blanton, had failed to show up for work that morning. Tammy Jo, a 46-year-old native of Jeffersonville, would never have missed work without calling in to inform them or give them a heads up that she couldn't make it. Her absence, therefore, was very odd, and Sabrina Hall couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She called Tammy Jo several times before a man finally answered the phone, claiming to be Tammy's brother. The man on the other end of the line told Sabrina that Tammy was away, caring for their father, who was extremely ill. Sabrina found this incredibly suspicious and grew increasingly concerned for her coworker. She called the local police department and requested them to conduct a welfare check on Tammy, fearing nothing but the worst. The authorities had every reason to be concerned about this call, as this was not the first time that day they were hearing the name Tammy Jo Blanton. Just a short time prior, in the early hours of the day, a fearful and terrified Tammy Jo had called the authorities out of fear for her life. At 2:52 that same morning, Tammy reported to the police that her ex-boyfriend, Joseph Oberhansley, was making an effort to intimidate her. He had come to her residence and would not leave despite her pleading with him to do so. The police arrived at her house at around 3 in the morning, just shortly after she made that distressing phone call, to find her ex-boyfriend, Joseph Oberhansley, still waiting outside. The man revealed that his key wasn't working, and so he was waiting for Tammy Jo to let him in. Tammy Jo Blanton explained that although the pair had once lived together, they had since broken up. Following their breakup, she insisted on having all of her locks changed because they were no longer together and his presence was no longer desired. The identification that Oberhansley had provided the police was listed to a different address, and so they asked him to leave as they could clearly see that his presence was causing her distress. Oberhansley was extremely annoyed by being told to leave, muttering to himself about how the police always side with women. He tried to defend himself and wriggle his way out of the situation, only to be sternly told again to leave. The officers, concerned for Tammy Jo, stayed with her a little while longer till they were completely certain that he was gone. Once it seemed like the storm had calmed, the police officers left for the night, leaving Tammy Jo alone in her home. What happened just a few hours later makes us wish that the police officers never would have left her side. Seeing how the event panned out, we can't help but wonder, what if? What if the police officers stayed? Then maybe none of this would have happened, and Tammy Jo would not have suffered such a fate so horrible and grim. After Tammy Jo Blanton's concerned co-worker urged the authorities to conduct a welfare check, several police officers were once again dispatched to her house. These police officers were different from the ones who were on duty when she called them earlier that day. The officers noted that her car was still in the driveway when they came to check the house. After conducting a basic search, they found signs of a forced entry at her back door, and the authorities could almost instantly sense that something wasn't right. They immediately approached the front door, knocking and calling out to Tammy Jo. The door finally opened, but it wasn't Tammy Jo. Instead, it was a man who identified himself as Joe. Since the officers had since changed their shift, they weren't aware that it was Joseph Oberhansley, the man who was reported to be harassing Tammy just a few hours earlier. The officers asked this man to produce an identification, to which he replied that he did not have any on him. The officers then asked to speak to Tammy as they were dispatched to come check on her. He tried hard to stall the cops, telling them that she was not home and that he wasn't too sure where she had gone. If it wasn't suspicious before, it certainly was now. If this man lived here, why couldn't he produce any identification? How did he know Tammy Jo Blanton? But more importantly, where exactly is she? There were too many signs pointing to something suspicious, and so the police officers ordered Joe to leave the house. It was once he left the house that the officers noticed that his right hand was badly injured, and that he had blood on both his knuckles. They patted him down only to find a folding knife in his pocket, and on it found hair and blood. Alarm bells were ringing, and the officers sent to conduct the search braced themselves to enter the house. Nothing could prepare them for what they were about to uncover. There was blood everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, in the bathroom, and the kitchen. The officers slowly walked through the house looking out for Tammy Jo Blanton. There was no response, and the signs were not looking good. This did not look good at all. The officers walked further into the house towards the bathroom and noticed that the door was severely damaged. It appeared to have been broken into or kicked in with a great deal of force. It was in the bathroom they made the horrific discovery of Tammy Jo Blanton's body, left in an unspeakable state. The following description of the crime scene might be very triggering for some viewers, so if you feel uncomfortable listening to the details, please skip ahead. The crime scene told the tale of a devastating tragedy. Whoever tore down that bathroom door was in a state of rage. Only an unspeakable level of anger could have led to what happened to Tammy Jo Blanton. There were large, deep cuts made to her face, neck, and chest. They also found a huge slash running across the front of her neck. Several more cuts were made to the front of her body, and it was found that her heart was not inside her chest. There was also evidence that she had been sexually assaulted. Not only was she slashed and stabbed over 25 times, but whoever did this to her inflicted as much pain as he possibly could. Her body was severely beaten, and the front part of her skull had been completely crushed. A more extensive forensic search found the presence of brain tissue inside the bathtub, as well as in some trash cans found inside the house. A deeper search of the crime scene revealed some tragic and sinister details of what transpired that horrible September morning. In the kitchen, investigators found a plate with what appeared to be a fragment of her skull with blood on it. Next to the plate was a pair of tongs with blood on the handle. The discovery was so shocking, it was almost incomprehensible. It didn't take officers at the scene too long to figure out who this man Joe really was and how he knew Tammy. When they questioned him further about what transpired between the hours of 3 a.m. and 10 a.m. that day, Joseph Oberhansley resigned to his fate and revealed to the police officers exactly what happened to Tammy Jo and what he did to her. He confessed that after he was made to leave her house at 3 a.m., he parked his car just several blocks away from Tammy's house, plotting the revenge he was about to take on his ex-girlfriend. He waited in his car, waiting for the right moment to strike. He told them he broke in through the back door and chased Tammy through the house. Tammy, who must have been terrorized, even having called the cops on her ex-boyfriend a couple of hours earlier, was now being hunted and chased in her own home. She locked herself in the bathroom out of sheer fright, but the bathroom door did not stop Joseph, who proceeded to kick the door down with all of his power. He broke through the door and came at Tammy with a knife, plunging it into her body more than 20 times. After she died, he blew through her skull with a knife, cutting out portions of her brain to eat. He ate some of her brain raw and removed several more pieces to cook in the kitchen later. While cutting at her brain, he revealed he also tried to pull out her third eye with tongs. It did not stop there. Joseph Oberhansley then cut out Tammy's heart and a portion of her lung to eat it. The police officers located the murder weapons that he had used, a jigsaw and jigsaw blade, both of them covered in blood, still at her house. He was immediately arrested and charged with murder, burglary, sexual assault, and abuse of a corpse. In 2017, a decision was made that Oberhansley was deemed incompetent to stand trial for the murder and assault of his ex-girlfriend, Tammy Jo Blanton. He then was admitted to Indiana's Logansport State Hospital. The decision was reversed a year later in 2018, and the trial was set to begin. Oberhansley's lawyers wanted to employ the insanity defense, but Joseph was not sure whether this defense would hold out in court, as he believed it would admit guilt and the defense would not work out. His trial began in the fall of 2019, but a mistrial was soon declared as one of the witnesses who took the stand made a reference to Joseph's past criminal career. Rules of evidence dictate that the introduction of prior criminal offenses is not to be included in a trial unless an exception has been made. A new trial was then ordered, and prosecutors involved in the case agreed not to seek the death penalty, but rather sought out life in prison without the possibility of parole, as long as he did not pursue a mental health defense. The trial proceedings were extremely heavy for everyone involved. Notably, the prosecution warned the members of the jury that the evidence that would be brought forward would be worse than anything you would see in a horror movie. During the trial, the medical examiner revealed that Tammy was heavily mutilated with multiple stab wounds, with large sections of her brain, her lungs, and her heart missing from her body. The defense argued that Oberhansley's confession was coerced and that he did not actually kill Tammy. His lawyers pointed to two other men who they claimed to be responsible for the crime. He said on trial that he did return to her residence that night, but two African-American men apparently knocked him out. He claimed to be totally out of his head, being unable to process what was happening to Tammy Jo in the room next door. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict, finding Joseph Oberhansley guilty of murder and burglary. They, however, did not find him guilty of sexual assault. Joseph Oberhansley was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder and brutal mutilation of his girlfriend, Tammy Jo Blanton. Much of Oberhansley's notorious past came to light later. In December of 1998, when he was just 18 years old, he shot and killed his girlfriend at the time, Sabrina Elder. He also shot his own mother in the back and shot himself in the head. A bullet is still lodged in his frontal lobe as a result. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter in 2000 and spent more than 10 years in a prison facility in Utah. He was on parole during the time of Tammy's murder. Joseph Oberhansley is now appealing the sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole and is currently being held at Indiana's Castle Psychiatric Unit. His lawyers in July of 2022 filed a brief to have the court vacate his sentence due to years of severe mental illness. His defense attorney stated that it would be easy to look at the horrors visited upon Tammy and conclude they were simply the actions of a monster. But doing so would be reductive, and this court's review must look deeper. This court must consider his actions in the context of his profound mental illness. Following the first trial over Tammy Jo Blanton's murder, his defense attorneys asserted that his mental health was a huge factor in the way the events unfolded that night. Lawyer Bart Bateau cited the gruesome details of the murder, explaining that Oberhansley believed that Tammy Jo set out to kill him because she could hear his thoughts. He killed her out of fear that she would be after him. The fact that Joseph Oberhansley killed his girlfriend at the age of 18 and killed his next girlfriend, Tammy Jo Blanton, several years later, even after having called the authorities, Joseph Oberhansley still managed to break inside her house, brutally assaulting and killing her. What do you think could have been done to prevent the murder, despite her seeking help just hours earlier? Let us know what you think of this truly terrible case and what can be done to ensure the safety of women like Tammy Jo. Thank you for joining us today. Subscribe to stay updated for more videos like this.
If you found this interesting, like the video and subscribe to our channel.